Stop the cap.
Oh, so somebody wants me to comment on Julius Malema and his whole "kill the board" chant, and I've covered the South Africa topic before, um, and I see why white supremacists try to side with these Arab Egyptians because they invaded the land the same way. They're not the indigenous people. Now, I'm not going to get into all of my conversation about Egypt on this subject, but I'm just saying it's in the same vein. That's why they back each other up. The Egyptian Arabs want to be white, want to associate with white. Black people, the world over are not respected, and their claims to land are not respected. You know, the Europeans have zero claim to South Africa. I'll have white people who will come through and they will say, well, there's immigrants in Africa and black immigrants are in immigrants in Europe, black African immigrants in Europe, right? Like we seen the riots in France with the what was the Algerian boy who was killed in France. And Europeans will act like, well, aren't we benevolent? We allow these people, here. This is what the common European will say, right? Completely ignoring that, many of these people that were initially allowed in the country were sellouts to their own people because, they basically, during colonialism, did the British and many other European nations, favor. But it's mainly centered around, the British and the French, right? The French have been in North Africa for a very long time. You go to Morocco, French is a second language, right? You go to much of North Africa, French is a second language. Many of the black people who try to get into Africa are coming from, the francophone, nations in Central Africa because the French have dominated them. Again, going into the history of colonialism, the history of the French in Haiti, the history of the French in Central Africa. And, I talked about this in my video, when white people like to throw up, the black people, sold themselves, right? And they don't know the history of gunboat diplomacy, you know, freaking, oh, you're the king. Okay, grab his wife. Yeah, all right. You're going to bring me some people. And if you don't, we're going to, decapitate her. Games like that. Those that were that opposed were fought, oftentimes killed. Again, Badu Bansu II, whose head was in a glass jar and was returned to Ghana in, I believe, 2009. Right? This is why people will say things like white people are the devil or white people are savages, and they kind of, hide behind, all of their, technological advancement, in the, I'd say the from the 19th to the 21st century, right? Which, they always point out or try to say, that's because of European ingenuity. But like I said, European ingenuity is only matched by their savagery. I mean, it makes sense that if you have the whole entire planet's resources at your disposal, that frees you up, right? It frees you up to be able to, come up with innovative things and pay for universities, and, you're extracting, resources from all these other nations and bringing it back to yourself to enrich yourself. I mean, if you don't get to first place when you have the entire planet underneath your control, like I don't know what to say about that, right? But as it pertains to South Africa, let's just talk about South Africa, and well, actually, let's talk about like the colonialism, because it was the Dutch East Indian Company that was the ones who, like, when they say kill the boar, a lot of people don't understand the term, what, the boar is. The boar is basically a Dutch farmer. It's Afrikaans. That's the word that they use for farmer. And the Dutch went down there, made their claims, and then the British came after that and they made their claims. And this is at the same time that the British was going around, the globe, and the East Indian Company. They were going to, India, right? And you had the Battle of Plassey, where that's when basically the East Indian Company took over India. You also had the Opium Wars, where all that opium was grown in India, right, at the expense of the Indian people. Then it was transferred to China, as a market for the opium, right, which is why the Asian part of the world, Asian society, why they have a zero drug policy. It's because of the East Indian Company and the British. And they had their Opium War 1 and 2. I already did the video covering the subject, forcing opium on the Chinese people. The Chinese, emperors, I think it was like the Qing dynasty or whatever, they were trying to, stop the British from doing that. And the British was like, nah, we making our money. We're going to sell you basically what's going on now in America, opioids. We're going to get y'all high as fuck. That's why, when Mao Zedong, came to power in, what was that, the 40s, the 50s, right? When the Mao Zedong, came into power, he was like, nah, take all of them out, right? Anybody who was on opiates, they had a zero policy, a zero tolerance policy. And, those that had to be re-educated, right? That's where you get all this aspect of communism, because the British, they had come in there and they had really wreaked havoc. I mean, they even made the Chinese pay reparations for all of because the Chinese had their little Boston Tea Party. It was like a Boston Tea Party. And they threw all the opium, they burned it, threw it in the river and everything, because they didn't want their people getting high. The Chinese people were trying to protect their own people. And the British, they won the Second Opium War, and they made the Chinese pay them reparations, right? This is how fucked up they are, right? The British family is like the most evil organization ever. There's nothing proud about the British royal family, that exists out there. But I'm just saying all that to show you, to highlight, how colonialism has basically negatively affected all those people that are not white. And this is why when you get people that are self-hating and have inferiority complexes that they need to work through, right? This is why it's, I'm always shocked when I see these people that go out here and just, elevate white people, especially, non-black people, right? Because black people are, we're at the bottom and whatnot. But you get a lot of these non-black people where white people play these games where they elevate the other groups over black people, and then they feel, well, at least we're not black, right? And so they feel like they're better than the black people. And then so that creates this sort of back and forth infighting, with the black people and the non-black people, right? They did this in Uganda. That's why Idi Amin was like, all y'all motherfuckers get the fuck out. That's why he kicked them out, right? Again, going back to Mississippi Masala, which I post on the community tab, right? Because what they did is the British, they always do the same thing. They come through and they divide and conquer, right? India and Pakistan, divide and conquer, right? Hutus and the Tutsis, divide and conquer, right? The Asians versus the black people in Uganda, divide and conquer, right? So the Indians, they were running all the businesses. The black people were broke and dusty, right? They were feeling some type of way, right? And after they got the British out of there, they were like, yeah, and you Asians, you got to get the fuck on too, right? And then in comes the sanctions, in comes the we're not trading with you, in comes the we're going to plummet your currency, and then say, oh, look, the niggas, they can't govern themselves, right? I've seen comments like that about South Africa, about, getting the white people out of South Africa. And, they'll be like, oh, the black people, they're going to starve to death. And they weren't starving to death for thousands of years when they were living there. But now we have this modern infrastructure where, yeah, that might be a problem. I do think that a lot of black people are overly emotional sometimes, and they don't think about the logistics. They think we just want these people, out of here, which, totally understand it. But again, it's you're not living in, in grass huts, and it's not the freaking 15th century, and you go out there and there's just fields of animals for you to hunt and shit like that. It's not like that anymore, right? Besides, a lot of those skills have been lost. But I'm saying, you know, even now, when you look at the British and the Dutch, they came there to make themselves wealthy. That's what they came there for. And the black South Africans have been living in squalor and living in poverty ever since. That is how they've been living. That is why they're angry. Right? The white supremacists, they'll come through and they'll, oh, see, because the niggas, low IQs and this, that, and the third, right? Completely ignoring the systematic oppression of black people, in South Africa, right? First, it was the apartheid, and then it's the fact that they don't even need an apartheid anymore because white people have already extracted, the vast majority of wealth in South Africa. It's so one-sided. It's retarded. You can see it from a satellite. It's so one-sided. Pools and green shrubbery on one side of a fence, and then just shanty towns on the other side of the fence. That's how gross the wealth inequality is. That's why you see active self-protection having videos all the time of, mostly white folks getting carjacked and robbed in their gated communities and all that stuff, right? It's kind of crazy to me the way that white people live in South Africa, but that's how much they want to hoard onto their wealth that was passed down to them from the transgressions, of their ancestors. They came down there and they stole the land. They have no entitlement to that land. Period. Their children, their great children, their great great grandchildren have no ownership or entitlement to that land. It was stolen. And again, people will say, you'll have the Europeans say, oh, well, we let the immigrants, in Europe, in France or the UK, right? And again, colonialism. Right. Again, these are the people that they come there because the government, not you as a citizen, but the government has made agreements with those people because that was in exchange for, again, them selling out their own people, typically in their own nations and whatnot. You saw this with the damn Sepoy rebellion in India, where that whole thing where they had the bullet cartridges and they were covered in, oil, pig fat or cow, blubber or not blubber, but you know what I'm talking about, fat cow oil and everything. And Hindus and the Muslims, right? We know how they feel about pigs and cows, relatively speaking. So they snapped. It was like the last insult. That was the straw on the camel's back. But there was other shit that was going on. And they got to tearing them white people up. Straight up massacre. And the British, what did they do? They got the Sikhs to come in there and handle, the Sepoy rebellion, because the Sikhs, the warrior group, they were loyal to the British, right? And so again, what do you think happens later on? Right, the Sikhs, oh, you can come to any of the British Commonwealths. You are loyal. What do you call them? People are loyal subjects, right? You can come to London. You can come to Canada, right? Because Canada's not a real country; it's a Commonwealth. And again, they wrote their constitution in 1982, and they got there through I believe Queen Victoria with royal ascension. And again, if you look at the oaths that they take both in the UK and in Canada, the oaths are to the crown. Australia, same thing. It's to the crown. They're not independent states. They are the Queen, or now King Charles's bitch. King Charles is head of the Canadian military. King Charles is head of the Australian military. Okay, you gotta understand this. The British crown, it's still doing its thing like it was doing in the 1700s and all before that. It's still doing its thing. They just got smart with it, after the Revolutionary War when the Americans, basically, fought back and they figured, oh shit, we don't want to lose all our colonies. What do we do? Oh, we'll take a step back. King Charles can smack down any law in the UK before it even hits the floor. Okay, the House of Lords is basically all the relatives of the royal family and whatnot. They're not elected. They're not nobody votes for them to be in office. Right? The whole thing is a goddamn sham. They still operate on the whole like divine, majestic royalty concept or the bloodlines and all that other shit. You heard freaking who was it? Prince Williams talk about Africa is mine. It's mine for the taking. This is how they fucking think. Pathological. They are fucking pathological. But people want to ignore that shit. This is why white supremacy is so fucking dangerous. Okay. Where was I at? Talking about yeah, the claims, the claims that they try to make to the land. This is what I find funny, right? Right, because like I said in my other previous videos, it would be like if a bunch of Africans got on a boat in the 1600s, went to Germany, right? Raped, pillaged, and plundered their way through Germany, then controlled, all of the arable land in Germany, and then said, this is the land of, this is New Wakanda, right? And then 300 years in the future, or 500 years in the future, whatever it is, right? Black Africans in Germany are claiming this is my home and this is my land. And the Germans are like, yo, you need to get the fuck out. Like, y'all need to get the fuck out. Y'all took the shit. All of us are poor and dusty, living in squalor. Like, the shit looks like the white people walking around with bad teeth and shit, looking like fucking Willow, right? Mad Mardigan, right? Looking like Willow. And all the black people walking around looking like, Black Panther and shit, and they got on their African garb looking like Killmonger and walking around and whatnot, pulling down their lips, showing they blue shit in their mouth, right? Like, just imagine that. That is South Africa. The Wakandans, it's the literal mirror image of Wakandans in Germany claiming that it is their rightful place to be there. And how dare these Germans talk about kill the Wakandans. Oh, kill the Wakandans. Right. And the Wakandans are like, this is reverse racism. They're calling for Wakandan genocide, right? Like, it's like, why don't you get the fuck out and go home? Go back to where you belong. Right? If Europeans are going to run, if they can run around and say Europe is for Europeans, should an African not be able to say that Africa is for Africans? Right? It only makes sense. I don't even know how white supremacists even try to like the contradiction that they have, right? They want to claim that they're the victims and these darkies, they're coming to try to, kill us and all this other shit, right? But I'm like, why don't you tell them to go back to Europe? Why don't you say, hey, instead of getting freaking genocided, why don't you go back to where you come from? We have a place. It's called Europe. It's for us, right? I'm just saying, logically, for the white supremacists, right? You would think that's what they would be saying. But instead, they want to make it about, oh no, the black people. They want to talk about they're killing the white people. Oh, I'm like, why don't you tell them to go home? That would resolve that. Right? But again, and here's the funny part, right? The Boer War, they had two Boer Wars, the British versus the Dutch, right? The British versus the Afrikaners. Two wars. What was it over? Land and resources. So let me get this right. The white people can slaughter the fuck out of each other, right? Like, they were literally killing each other, right? Not just a song, not just a chant, kill the Boer, oh, kill the Boer, right? Not just a song. No, they were actually, the white people actually were killing each other, and they had two fucking wars over the shit, over land. But when it comes to the black Africans that have indigenous roots there, if they even so much as sing a song about taking the land back by force and through violence, oh, that's a fucking problem. Oh, shit. Oh, they're calling for genocide. Oh, that's a fucking problem. So let me get this right. So white people can fight over land and resources that in somebody else's country, they can slaughter the hell out of each other. But if the indigenous people try to fight for those same land and resources that actually legitimately belongs to them, oh, it's a fucking problem. Julius Malema, Julius Malema is a problem. We gotta do something about it. The hypocrisy, yo, the hypocrisy, and the pathological behavior of white Europeans. It's insane. It's insane. And they run around acting like nobody with a brain with two brain cells can figure this shit out. The Europeans do not belong in Africa. They forced their way into Africa. If we were talking about China or some other shit, right? Again, the whole thing with what was it? Hong Kong, right? Hong Kong is there, right? I used to think like, no, Hong Kong is a free democratic society. Hong Kong should have its freedom. And then I went and I discovered how Hong Kong came to be. Hong Kong and Macau, for that matter. Due to the Opium War and the treaties that were made. I was like, oh, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna need y'all to give that back to the Chinese. Right? I'm gonna need y'all to give that back. That's not saying that, that how the Chinese government operates and the communism and all that shit is great, but it does legitimately belong to the fucking Chinese. Now, Taiwan, that's a whole nother story, because what was it? Was it Chiang Kai-shek? Who was the one that rolled out that didn't agree with the Mao Zedong shit, and they fled to Taiwan. They left and went to Taiwan. And they also got a whole bunch of like individual rights, because there's an actual native Taiwanese population, and they're like treated like more respective Native Americans, because the Taiwanese do recognize that they were there first. Right. So they got different laws. They're allowed to have guns and hunt and shit like that, because they were doing that shit before the Taiwanese from Taiwan. I mean, the Chinese that came to Taiwan and became the new Taiwanese came there. Right. So they recognize that shit. But Hong Kong, nah, that's China. That's China's, if you know the history. But see, this is the problem. This is why. When white people run around and they say, we don't want CRT, what they don't want is, they don't want real history to be taught. Because if you look at real history, you will see how evil these motherfuckers are. Their whole history is rife with evil deeds and evil actions. And they'll sit there and they'll try to be like, oh, well, this person did this bad thing, or this person did that bad thing, right? And then try to, again, like it's like the Zulus, they were warring with other South Africans, right? And the Europeans will try to be like, well, see, it's all the same. No. So let me get this right. So black people should be able to justify fucking up white people because of what Vlad the Impaler did, right? Or black people should be able to justify fucking up white people because of what Napoleon was doing. Right? Just because white people have conflicts with each other. Like, no, let's draw the line at the racial shit. Internal conflicts are internal conflicts. You see what I'm saying? But they try to play that game when you try to, talk about the moral context of it. Right? But again, this is a racial conversation, right? Because again, they're saying kill the Boer. They're saying, that the white folks of South Africa basically need to give the land back, and black people need to stop living in squalor like they are, because of the system of apartheid and how their land was just taken. The only reason why the white people are in South Africa, why South Africa is a thing like that, is because that is the only place in Africa where white people can survive. Okay, because when they tried to move north in more interior into the country, they couldn't do it because of the biologics. It's kind of like War of the Worlds, where the aliens came down, right? If you saw the Tom Cruise movie, right? And what killed them? The germs, right? and the freaking South Africans, they tried to move north, but they have no natural protection. They got no natural protection against the sunlight. They got no natural protection against malaria. They got no natural protection against the tsetse fly and sleeping sickness. They have no natural protection, right? And then tons of other bugs and germs, that are. I mean, you're entering the tropics at that point. You know what I'm saying? All type of freaking venomous shit and everything else. That is the area where you're entering. Like you're. I know that was in freaking the Amazon, but I'm like, white people walking into the tropics, they on some arachnophobia type of shit. You know what I mean? You don't know what you're coming across. You know what I mean? Fucking big ass mosquitoes the size of fucking dragonflies. I don't even know they had that shit. But you get what I'm saying. You know what I mean? It's some they walking into some Jumanji shit or some damn King Kong type of shit. Like when they fell into that swamp and the damn big ass insects ate their asses and shit. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So they tried it, and their livestock were dying, their cows were dying, their pigs were dying, right? Because they were getting hit with them same mosquitoes and catching the malaria and the sleeping sickness and all that stuff. And so they couldn't go north. So they stay right on the coast, because if you flip the earth upside down, South Africa is basically on the same parallel as Europe. That's why they can farm and they can grow all the same crops that they grow in Europe. It's a temperate climate zone. It's not in the tropics. And Europeans come from what? A temperate climate zone. So that's the primary reason they're there. It's like, oh, this is perfect. Oh, it's just like Europe. Yeah, in many ways it is. You see? But they have no claims to that land. They have absolutely no claims to that land. And all that's going to happen, even if at one point in time the black people are able to get them out of Africa, right? Get them out of South Africa. The white people are going to make them pay. They're going to go, oh, there's racism and the IMF, and we're going to sanction the fuck out of you, and we're going to make your currency go to zero and everything. And then they're going to try to do the same thing as Haiti. Which is why black people got to figure out, some other system as a continent, which again, they eliminated Gaddafi, off of that, and the Arab states. That's why you see Russia and the Arab states with the whole BRICS thing and whatnot. That's why they're trying to find a different avenue. Right, because again, Gaddafi got killed because of that Mataba conference. It wasn't just because he was a dictator in his nation. The West supports dictators as long as you support them. But he had the Mataba conference talking about, freaking the U.S. government. They operate on fractional reserve banking. They don't even have any gold reserves like that. We're the ones with the gold and the oil, so why don't we, organize and get all of Africa, have a United States of Africa, because that's what Gaddafi was trying to do, and we don't have to deal with the IMF. We don't have to deal with them. You see. So, and if I'm not mistaken, the president or the leader of the IMF has to be European or American, something like that. IMF has. Okay, let me see. Let me see if this is true. Leader of the IMF has to be European or American. Let's see. I heard that. I don't know if it. The gentleman's agreement under which the IMF managing director is European and the World Bank president is American. Why is the IMF chief always European? Following foreignpolicy.com. This is foreignpolicy.com. Is the head of the IMF always European? Historically, the IMF's managing director has been European citizen and the president of the World Bank has been an American citizen. However, this standard is increasingly being questioned and competition for these two posts may soon open up to include other qualified candidates from any part of the world. See, the white people are going to be like, no, that's diversity. That's diversity. No, again, why? You know what's so funny? Whenever white people have a monopoly on a position or a monopoly that gives them, basically, unchallenged dominance, anything to say, hey, we're talking about the entire world here. Like with when it comes to the money, anything that challenges that, they're going to say, oh, this is diversity hire. This is the diversity. This is wokeness. That's what it is. This is the leftist agenda, right? You see the fuckery here? It's pure fuckery. And not only that, like, it's like your average white person doesn't understand how white supremacy works. They don't. Your average white person doesn't understand the system of white supremacy or the systems that are in place. Now, some of your hoteps, right, they're going to argue with me. They're going to be like, no, they know exactly what's going down. There are those that know exactly what's going down, and they're on that muhaha shit. But there's other white folks out here, they don't really understand the shit because they haven't done the research. They're like, oh, white people aren't that bad. You all are, this is reverse racism. And then all you got to do, just like I'm doing in this video, is just lay down the facts. Just lay down the facts. This is what y'all motherfuckers did. This is your history. This is your legacy. This is what it was done. This is what continues to be done. What is your argument? I'm giving you everything that explains why people are mad at you. Why people run around and they quote unquote hate white people. I'm showing you why they do. And if and you have a choice. You either support that and you do everything in your power to reinforce it, right? Which is why you would get called a white supremacist, or you actually challenge it. Right? Which means, technically speaking, you would be operating against the interest of your own people. Right? The interest of them being, the dominant force, right? But you'd be operating in the interest of, all of humanity, and there actually being, equality and more of a balance on earth, as opposed to this current system of exploitation that we currently have, which, basically is at everybody else's expense who's not white and at the strict benefit of white people. So that's why I stay out of the conversations about, America and China and who's a good guy and who's a bad guy. Like, black people, black people in America got to really look at themselves in the mirror when they want to talk about who's the good guy and who's the bad guy as it pertains to America and the way that we've been treated in America. Right. And when other nations around the world are trying to challenge the things that America does. America has done it to Africa. America has done it around the world. And Europe has done the same thing. You know what I mean? So we really gotta, get our facts straight on this. There's certain conversations, there's certain, yeah, for America. Like, I'm not gonna stand up and shout too loudly when it comes to the shit. But again, even we have our own conflict of interest because we are American citizens. And again, all this stuff globally affecting the economy and inflation and all that stuff affects us as African Americans in America, right? We're in the belly of the beast. We're in the belly. You know what I mean? So, and you got knights outside of the belly trying to slay the beast. And we're inside the beast. So, it's a much more complicated issue than just a cut and dry black versus white versus, Chinese versus this versus that. Because truth be told, many of these other groups, they're not going to be any more benevolent to us than Europeans. Arguably, as Dr. Claude Anderson, it was Dr. Claude Anderson or was it Amos Wilson? I believe it was both of them. Unlike white people, they have no guilt. You know what I'm saying? As far as Asians are concerned, they're like, hey, we wasn't fucking with you. We don't owe you shit. Right? As far as they're concerned. Right? Even though we've seen some of these videos, of black people being harassed in China and the Chinese trying to pull some fuck shit in Africa and getting slapped around and shit and abusing people, that are working for the Chinese and whatnot. Right. We've seen a number of videos, pop up of Chinese people getting checked in Africa, because again, unfortunately for black people, white people have, in their media, has created this message to all the non-white people that, it's okay to disrespect black people. Right. Again, you create the layers, you create the stratification. Right. They did this with this whole affirmative action thing at, at Harvard with the affirmative action case, universities. Right. Asians bitching about, oh, we're not, the black kids are the reason why we're not getting into college. Asians make up East Asians make up like 3% of the population. Asians as a whole, including Indians, make up 5% of the population, and it's like 5 or 6% of the population, and they represent 25% of the population at Harvard. Like they're nowhere near being underrepresented. They're overrepresented. Right. And now you got Asians writing articles and bitching, talking about, if it's a meritocracy, then how come we don't see more Asians in leadership positions as CEOs and corporate executives and shit? I'm like, we told you that, dumbass. We told you that. But you wanted to get a cookie from NASA. Right. So you helped them undermine the shit that, black people fought for. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, now they're going to turn the tables on you and use it against you, you dumbass. But you let them freaking, fake you out on some, no, the real reason is because, those unqualified blacks, they're the reason why you didn't get in, even though, you're significantly overrepresented at these white universities because you elevate whiteness and put it on a goddamn pedestal, which is why you think it's more important to go to Harvard University as opposed to going to any of your Asian universities. Fucking retarded. Anyway, I'm done with this video. Like, I'm just done. I get done with the world sometimes because everybody's a fucking dumbass and doesn't recognize how this motherfucker actually operates, functions, and works. Anyway, that's my video. SWP out. White South Africans have no business in South Africa, period. Y'all stole the fucking land. You need to give it back, and you need to take your asses back to freaking, Belgium or wherever the fuck y'all came from. Anyway, that's my video. SWP out. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe.